Hey bag maker, today I'm going to be talking about pattern weights, various fabrics that I've added to my stash. Earlier today I finished that Alaska quilt that I've been working on. I'll be demonstrating how to use the big jig, and there's a great giveaway at the end. I'm Sarah Lawson from Sew Sweetness. Thanks so much for joining me for Sewcial Sunday, my weekly sewing chat. Hey everybody, happy Sunday and welcome to Sewcial Sunday. Thank you so much for tuning in and Happy New Year. I see Lisa is watching, Kristen from Frigid, Michigan. It's pretty cold here in Chicago today as well. Andrea is watching from Ohio. Just a friendly reminder before I get started, just about everything that I talk about during Sewcial Sunday are things that I've purchased myself. So these are not things that I'm getting paid to talk to you about, but just cool things that I found that I'd like to share with you. And everything I'm scheduled to talk about, I link to in the description. So if you're interested in finding out more about any of the books, fabrics, notions, or projects that I talk about during Sewcial Sunday, just check that link in the description and you can find out more information there. So for the notion of the week, I wanted to actually share a Christmas gift that I received from my friend Tamara. So she made these herself, and I felt like it would probably be a fun project to make if you're so inclined. So Danny's going to switch to the overhead camera. So I'm not necessarily showing you how to make these, but I'll show you what Tamara sent me. And these are pattern weights, and these are really great for holding your pattern pieces while you're either tracing or cutting around your pieces. And they're super cute tiles, and Tamara stamped really fun sewing themed illustrations on them. So I'm going to pull all of them out so that you can see what they look like. I love, these two are my favorites, these last two, and they're tiles with some wool felt glued to the back to keep them from sliding around. And they're a pretty good weight. I've been using them to cut out pieces because normally my habit is, I know of course using a rotary cutter would be so much easier, but my normal process for cutting out pattern pieces, and this is exactly what I do. So I would put the pattern weights on them. Generally I'm using a friction pen, and I'm usually drawing on the wrong side of the fabric. I'm drawing around the entire piece, what have you, if it's on the fold, and then I'm just removing the paper and cutting around. So these pattern weights are really handy because they're really great weight, and even if the fabric kind of gets tugged around, that piece is staying in place. So thank you, Tamara, for this awesome gift. And in addition to the notions that I keep on my cutting table over here, these have a special place and I use them quite often. So pattern weights that my friend Tamara made for me. In the past, I have to admit I was using 1 or 2 pairs of scissors just to lay on top of that paper pattern piece. So the pattern weight's definitely much better than the scissors, obviously because the one end of the scissors are quite large. So I've really been enjoying using those pattern weights. I wanted to share a recipe that I made yesterday, but my mom's been making this recipe for years. It was originally from a magazine called Cooking Light, and Danny's going to put a picture up on the screen, not my photo, but the photo from the original recipe. And link is in the description for this. It is a blackberry-lemon pudding, and it sort of has a cakey top layer, and then the maybe 2/3 of the rest of the dessert, because of the way you bake it, is sort of like a lemon custard pudding layer. The pudding layer is my favorite. The recipe calls for blackberries. I'm sure you could try other berries as well, like blueberries. I always use blackberries because I really like blackberries, but if you're interested in checking out that recipe, the link is in the description, and I happen to have a bunch of lemons on hand, so I whipped out a double batch yesterday, and it is my favorite, so I'm sure it will be gone soon. So I have a question for you. Let me know in the comments, what's your favorite fruit? I like a lot of different fruits. I'd have to say maybe apples or cherries are my favorites, but I like just about every fruit. I'm not a fan of certain melons, like cantaloupe. Watermelon's fine, but Again, let me know in the comments what your favorite fruit is. And I've been adding lots of fabrics to my stash the last few weeks. I'm not sure what the deal is, but I was browsing my bookshelves in the basement where I store my fabric, and I had to sort of rearrange the other day because I'm starting to run out of room, and definitely out of room because my fabric purchases are way outpacing the bag sewing that's going on around here. So I'll have to find a remedy to that situation. But in the meantime, here's the new fabrics that I've added to my stash, and Danny's going to switch to the overhead camera so that I can share them with you. So this is a fun one. I just purchased this single print. I liked the illustrations. I liked the moths, and it had sort of a brown background color, which I thought was interesting and a little bit different than fabrics that I would normally pick up. And these fabrics are a design I've used in the past, but reprinted in slightly different colorways. So these are designed by a chino, and these are canvas fabrics. So I picked up 3 different colorways. This one's sort of a navy blue background with a sort of a beige. The design is in beige. This next one is sort of a hot pink with a natural colored background, and this one's my favorite, black and not quite white. It's a natural colored background, and let me open this one up so that you can see the full design a little bit better. It's sort of a damask print with animals. It's really cool. I've made a few bags actually, and a duffel bag in this particular print, so I really was excited to see new colorways coming out. And this next set of fabrics is designed by Anna Maria Horner, and I didn't pick up the fabric line is called Made by Me, and I didn't pick up the whole fabric line, just some of the larger scale prints. This one right here, I just really loved the colors. And then the last 2 are the same design as that first one that I showed you, just different colorways. Now that I have this one in person, I think this is probably, the green one is probably my favorite out of the 3, but they're all quite good. Lovely bright colors. So again, links to all of the fabrics are in the description in case you're interested in checking out any of those after the show. And I was super excited earlier this afternoon to finish up the Alaska quilt that I've been working on. If you've been tuning into Sewcial Sunday recently, I shared sort of I guess a sneak peek of the quilt that I was working on. All in, I think it took me about 3 weeks of concentrated time to work on the quilt, even though I was doing other tasks in between. So obviously it's been a lot longer than 3 weeks since I initially started. But Danny's going to put a picture up on the screen of a photograph that we took earlier outside. This is my finished Alaska quilt. I used a pre-cut kit from Laundry Basket Quilts to make that, and actually I enjoyed it so much that I'm going to make the same quilt pattern a second time, but in bright rainbow colors with a black background. So I'm really curious to see, once I finish that second quilt up, which version I like better, sort of the lighter creams with sort of less bright colors, or if I'll like the brighter colors with the black background. So we'll see. Maybe I can finish that up by the end of March. We'll see how that goes. But I wanted to ask you another question. What do you do when you notice a quilting error? So for instance, when I was working on that quilt, I noticed on one of the blocks I had the different color segments in the wrong place, and I contemplated, because it was 4 blocks of each style of block, I contemplated just putting the quilt together and leaving the blocks as is, but I thought, you know, that particular quilt has sort of radiating colors, and if I don't fix my mistake, it might be noticeable in the finished quilt. As far as bag projects, depends on how big the sewing mistake is. So if it's a glaring error, I will take my seam ripper out and rip the seam and resew it, such as big puckers through curved edges. But other things, I'm not a perfectionist sewist, and so I sort of weigh the pros and cons, I guess, of the sewing error before I take things apart. I've had big errors in the past, such as sewing the zipper upside down in the top of the bag, which would make the zipper unusable. And I can't believe I actually thought in that instance, I don't know, should I really unpick the seam for this sewing mistake with the zipper? You know, obviously the zipper is not usable, so that's a pretty big error. But let me know in the comments, what's your biggest sewing mistake? Looking forward to looking at some of those comments after the show. So in lieu of the book review for today, I just wanted to share, this is non-sewing related, but another Christmas gift that I got. Danny's going to switch back to the overhead camera. My friend Brandy got me this blank journal, and it actually has my name printed on the cover, which I really love. I love the artwork of the animals on the front, and started a new section for 2022. So I journal, and what I normally do is I for sure journal 5 things that I'm grateful for. So yesterday I wrote down my 5 things. In addition to the 5 things that I'm grateful for, if something happens like tough situation or I get upset about something, I'll write that down too, because normally when you look back at something like that a week or 2 later, what made you so frantic in the first place generally isn't so bad once you've had some time away from it. And I was laughing because when I was talking about that lemon blackberry pudding before, I wrote down in my journal that I was doubling the recipe because I love that dessert so much, and I doubled all of the ingredients except for the eggs. And when I was baking it in the oven yesterday, I was trying to figure out why is this so soupy? I've cooked it for the correct time. It should be sort of firming up and turning into a pudding. And I looked at the recipe over and I said, you know, everything's in there that should be in there. And then I came to the section with the eggs and I realized I didn't double the eggs. So there were supposed to be 3 eggs in the recipe. Because I doubled it, there should have been 6, and so that's probably why I had to bake it for twice as long than I normally would. But those are the kinds of things that I write down in my journal, and it really helps, especially writing the 5 things that I'm grateful for, because it kind of allows you to take a step back, and especially when you're worrying about things, to sort of pause and think, all right, you know, I do have 5 things that I'm grateful for today, even if they're simple things. Like sometimes I'll write, you know, I was watching the birds at the bird feeder today and I saw this one particular bird. So things like that I'll write in my journal. And to go along with that, I wanted to mention, I know I've mentioned this book a few years in the past, but my therapist originally gave this to me. It's called The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it's really been helpful to me over the years because the 4 agreements are 4 simple things that you can try to do every day and live a happier and better life, I guess. So I'll just briefly go through the 4 agreements, and then I have a couple of things bookmarked in this book. So number 1 is be impeccable with your word, and I have lots of things highlighted from when I first read this book. Be impeccable with your word. Use the word in the correct way. Use the word to share your love. So just being careful with your words, especially when you're talking to other people, saying what you really mean. And I do this especially if I'm really agitated about something. I'll keep it inside to make sure before I say it if it's really what I meant to say, or if in the heat of the moment I'm just saying the first thing that comes to mind and maybe I didn't exactly mean it that way. So number 2 is don't take anything personally. You are never responsible for the actions of others. You are only responsible for you. So that's something that I've gotten better at, sort of like exercising a muscle. The more you do it, the better you are at it. And I feel a lot better personally, not taking things personally when people say things or do things. It really has nothing to do with me. It's just them. Don't make assumptions. This one's a really hard thing for me because I'm always trying to work out, are people behaving toward me because of something I did, something I said, trying to analyze the things that they're not saying. The way to keep yourself from making assumptions is to ask questions. Make sure the communication is clear. If you don't understand, ask. And that's a good way to avoid some pitfalls, you know, especially communicating with Danny. If I don't understand something, if I don't like something, I'll just say it. And the 4th agreement is always do your best. And your best is never going to be the same from one moment to the next. Everything's always changing. Some days you might not feel well, some days you'll feel better than others, and your best is going to be different every time. So this is actually Toltec, ancient people of southern Mexico. It's knowledge that's been passed down, and this book has been really helpful in addition to journaling. So a little bit of non-sewing related speak, but I thought, I don't know, especially now it's important to think about things you're saying and doing and not, I guess, overreacting to what you think other people are saying or doing toward you. So I'd like to invite all of the bag makers to stand proud. Let us know in the comments that you're part of the Sew Sweetness Squad. Danny and I are so happy that you're here and joining us for Sewcial Sunday. And again, I wish you a wonderful 2022 up ahead, making lots of wonderful projects, happiness ahead. So thank you again for tuning into our show. So I had an email recently about how to use a hump jumper. We sell one in the shop called the Big Jig. They're known by several different names, but they basically provide a single purpose of sewing over a thick seam in sort of a consistent nature, having your stitches be the same length rather than once you get to the thick part. Sometimes what can commonly happen is your stitches sort of get bunched up when you get to the thicker portion, and then when you sew back down to a thinner portion, the stitches sort of even out. A common instance for that is the top edge of the bag when top stitching jeans. That side seam makes things really thick, and so I wanted to demonstrate how to use the Big Jig. In this particular demonstration, I'm using fabric combined with clear vinyl, but this technique works with any time you're encountering thickness in a certain area, such as the side seams when you're top stitching a bag. So enjoy the demonstration. So this area where the strap tab is kind of thick because the fabric is folded over a few times. So I did sew one version of this bag with just my regular Teflon foot. However, I find it really helpful to use a product. The one I'm going to use is called Big Jig, but there's other versions out there such as the Jig. This is basically usually made from acrylic or plastic, and it's available in different heights, and it helps sew over areas where there will be a thick seam, such as like the side seam of jeans, in this case where the strap tab is. So again, you can just directly sew it straight across, but I'm going to demonstrate this tool in this particular section of the video. So I'm going to start sewing without the Jig. As I get closer to that thick seam, I'll explain what I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm getting closer to that thick area, so I'm going to stop with the needle down, lift the presser foot up. I'm going to slide the acrylic off the back, and if you'll notice, there's a dashed line. That's for placement of your presser foot, so you can get an equal amount of the presser foot on either side where the opening is of the acrylic template. Okay, so I'm going to drop my presser foot. The needle is still down. The acrylic is underneath, which kind of heightens the foot in preparation for getting to that thick seam. So I'll be sewing a few stitches on top of the acrylic, and then I'll continue on sewing on top of the folded up thick layer of fabric. Okay, so this can come out. I'm fully on top of the fabric, and I'm going to sew a couple more stitches. Again, I'm going to stop with the needle down, lift the presser foot up, and this time I'm going to slide the Big Jig from the opposite direction. So again, the presser foot is centered, and here's the opening where the needle will be coming through. So I'm going to sew a few stitches. I'm fully on top of the acrylic now until I clear this fabric of the strap tab. Again, needle down, I'm going to lift the presser foot up. I'm going to move the acrylic, and I should just be on top of the clear vinyl layers now. Oh, that was quickly over. So I hope you enjoyed that demonstration showing how to use a hump jumper like the Big Jig. Like I said, it's very useful for those really thick seams, especially when bag making. So I'm going to be answering some questions live in just a minute. So if you have a question for me, go ahead and type it in the comments right now, either on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you watch our show. It can be a general sewing question, question about a notion or tool, or a bag making related question. Before we get over to the questions, I wanted to announce the winner of last week's giveaway, and that winner is Cindy Ball. So congratulations to you, Cindy. Please contact me after the show so that I can get you set up with your prize. And my email is sarah@sewsweetness.com, and that's Sarah with no H. So I pulled out this little, I don't know if you noticed it, the first half of the show, but I sort of wanted to give you a sneak peek, but without showing the full project. So I feel a little, I don't know if uneasy is quite the word, but like especially when I'm working on quilts, I sort of alternate working on quilty projects in between work-related things. So in the case of that Alaska quilt, I wrote a bag pattern, and then I started working on that quilt, and then I wrote another bag pattern, and then I finished the quilt. So I kind of alternate the quilt with work-related sewing things. And so even though I'm mostly sharing like finished quilts on the show lately, I have been working on things behind the scenes. I'm never sure how to start the sneak peeks. I'm not quite, usually we try to do sneak peeks 2 weeks before new patterns come out, because generally I'm releasing them in sets of 4 new patterns. I'm generally not sure how to share progress with my bag patterns without sharing things too far ahead of time so that people start getting impatient. But I wanted to share this little sneak peek, and this bag is sort of a, for me at least, a smallish type bag. I'm usually designing medium or large size bags, but really into the fabric combination. I like the stripes on the side of the bag with some nice oranges over here. So that's as much as I'm going to share for now. If you ever have any thoughts about sharing sneak peeks for new patterns, how I can best go about that, I'm all ears for that. And again, you can email me, sarah@sewsweetness.com. I don't know, I guess I always struggle what's the best way to go about that as far as sneak peeks, patterns I'm working on, even though it might be months out before they're released. So let me know if you have any thoughts. But anyway, Danny, take it away with the questions. Laura says, oh, a Harry Potter documentary. I think, did I forget to write that on my, oh, I had that in my journal. Danny and Violet and I watched on HBO Max yesterday. They had a 20th anniversary Harry Potter special, I guess. It was I think it was an hour and a half, and it was talking to all the main characters, currently showing clips of all of the Harry Potter movies. So we really enjoyed it. William wasn't interested in watching, so that's why he skipped out on that. But we really love the Harry Potter books and movies. So when we saw the documentary that was coming out, we took advantage of that. Cindy says, do you have any tips for binding around corners? Let's see. So first off, you want to cut your fabric on the bias, the fabric that you'll be using for binding. I think I do have a video on my YouTube channel. If you'll type in the search box on the Sew Sweetness YouTube channel, binding, that video should come up. I think for non-bag projects, binding through the curve, you want to make sure to be careful not to pull and stretch the fabric through the curve, because sometimes it distorts the curve. Sometimes that's not as necessary for bag projects, but yeah, for sure, cutting that binding on the bias will make things so much easier for you. Angela says, what is the new challenge for January, and how long do we have to finish it? So the January challenge actually isn't starting until middle of January, but you'll have the last 2 weeks in January and the full month of February to complete the challenge. I know someone asked this last week and I forgot to write it down, so I apologize for that, but we'll be announcing it mid-January on the blog and on the live shows. Tabby says, what does your shirt say or mean? Danny, if you want to take the comment off the screen for just a second. Selfish sewer, or sewist is another way to look at it. So I guess I consider selfish sewing a sewing project that you're working on just for yourself, either something that you want to make or something that you want to make and keep, as opposed to sewing for others, such as like hemming someone's pants or custom orders, things like that. So that's what a selfish sewing project, at least what I would consider it to be. Stephanie says, Sarah, what was the brand of your saddle seat? Are you happy with it? I was long arming all day today and my feet hurt, even with a pad to stand on, thinking about purchasing a saddle seat. So I don't remember the company. There was a website that I purchased it from that had all sorts of different brands of saddle seats. Feel free to email me after the show and I'll get you that website name. They also have a bunch of relatively inexpensive saddle seats on Amazon as well. Some of them have quite good ratings. So there's a few options as far as the saddle seats. We still have it in the sewing room and I use it for various things. I'm currently standing up to sew, so I'm not necessarily using it for that, but when I'm cutting out fabric, working at the table, sometimes when I want to sit down, I'll definitely pull out the saddle seat. Mary says, what size needle do you use with the big jig? So I just use my regular needle that I use for either bag making, or I use the same needle for quilts as well. I use a 9014 Microtex needle, and I use either Organ brand needles or Schmetz brand needles. What is a good zipper to use for beginner bag sewing? So sometimes it depends on what the pattern that you're using calls for, but I feel like using a handbag zipper is easier to sew with, and a handbag zipper is either a number 5 zipper or a number 4.5 zipper, and handbag zippers are generally 1 1/4 inch wide, and they're designated as handbag zippers because usually they have larger zipper pulls. Do you have a New Year's resolution? That's a good question. I guess I really don't. I don't know. I guess I'm not the kind of person that usually chooses one. I haven't given it any thought, so sorry I couldn't answer that question for you. Robin says, are bag dimensions inside or outside dimensions? So for my patterns at least, they are the outer dimensions, and I'm going to pull this chickadee bag out, just to use it as an example. Danny, if you wouldn't mind moving the question off the screen for just a second. So this particular bag, a lot of times, this front piece over here, a lot of times some people might think say the length and the height of the bag would be designated by this actual pattern piece that's the front. But because in a bag such as this, there's side pockets that kind of push out the width a little bit, for this particular bag, I actually measured from one end to the other where the side pockets ended rather than when the actual body of the bag ended. So my process is I usually finish the bag up and then I measure it. So any parts that are sticking out like this would be included in that type of measurement generally. Robin, oh, that was the question I just answered. And I see the camera is, there we go. What is the difference between a lining fabric and secondary fabric in the Aragon bag pattern? Do I have an Aragon bag out here? I must have taken it back down to the basement. So in the Aragon bag, I used 3 different fabrics, one for the exterior, one for the lining, and I think I used a 3rd fabric for the lining side of some of the pockets, just to sort of distribute the fabric a little bit better so that none of the cuts were humongous. Rather than having a humongous lining supply list, say like 2 yards, I added a 3rd fabric just to cut down the lining requirements a little bit. Karen says, do you carry cork made in Portugal? Do you find there's a big difference in cork quality from different sources? So the first part of that question, the cork we sell on our website is from Portugal. As far as the difference in different corks, I actually have never used or seen in person corks from another place or another store, so I guess I don't have much of a comparison. We've been selling cork for, I think, almost 6 years on the website, so yeah, time has sure flown. What interfacing do you find the most versatile trying to pad out my stash? So the interfacings that I use most often, foam interfacing, and I know there's some people that prefer not to use foam. If you'd like a substitute for foam, perhaps Polythermal-lam. It is made of fleece, so the structure of the bag will be a little bit different, but it is sort of an alternative that's perhaps a little bit thinner than the foam. For lining fabrics, I use Shape-Flex, also known as SF101, and sometimes I like to throw in a little bit of stiffness to certain parts of bags, and in that case, I'll use either Peltex or Decoville Heavy. Either one is fine. That Chickadee backpack that I was showing earlier, that front zippered pocket had a piece of either Peltex or Decoville Heavy inserted just to make it a bit more stiff and less, not that it would be floppy, but yeah, more stiff. Let's see. What do you recommend to use to keep wallet corners from folding in from use? If it's a wallet that you've made, I'm not sure if the interfacing what you had in the original wallet, but again, either maybe a Peltex or Decoville Heavy option might be interesting. I'm actually working on a wallet right now, and I'm sort of experimenting with different combinations. It was a little scary to me because I'm trying to experiment with different combinations that I haven't used before, and so trying to figure out, not that wallets I've done in the past are bad or wrong, but sometimes I just like to try different things out just to give different experiences or different, I guess, knowledge if you've worked on some of my other wallets in the past, if that makes sense. Terry says, how tall is the new bag? There's actually, I finished 3 bags so far. The wallet's the 4th one. Let's see. I've got a big ruler over here. Let me try to pull it out. It is 10 inches tall. That bag, this little bag that's over here. Kelly says, could you show the black and white bag to your left? Where did you get the fabric? This is the Super Bloom tote bag, and it is Joel Dewberry fabric. This is, the fabric is called Antler Damask, and you can find some in different colorways than this one because this one's out of print at Hawthorne Supply Company, and if you type in Joel Dewberry in the search box, that one should come up. Kara says, what kind of zipper was that in your demo on the Big Jig? It looked great. That's, if memory serves me correct, that was one of the By Annie zippers that we sell on our website. So we sell 30-inch zippers and 40-inch zippers. Those are the handbag zippers in a lot of different colors. So if you check the notions section of the website, should be at the back of the list, I think. One of the zippers, or you can just type in zipper in the search box. I'm sorry, we have a zipper section on the website.
I think on that one they see the zipper, Sarah. Here, I'll just go to the side and I'll pause it, okay?
Okay, sure. So this area where the strap tab is, okay. So that particular demonstration clip was from the Pinto Stadium bag video from Minikin Season 3. So in that particular pattern, I added binding to both edges of the zipper to finish it because it was a clear vinyl bag, and so I used binding throughout the pattern to finish all of the raw edges, including the zipper. So that's just fabric. That was, I think it's fabric designed by Juicy Juice for Andover Fabrics. Diane says, do you need the hump jumper with your Juki TL18 with its micro lifter? That's a great question. Actually, with the micro lifter, if you have that on your sewing machine, the hump jumper is not necessary because your micro lifter will take care of that for you. Retha says, have you guys ever played the game Pegs and Jokers? Actually, I've never heard of it. Danny, have you ever heard of that game?
Cool.
I'll have to write that down and check it out after the show. Thank you. Marcia says, would you remind us which Juki you use? I'm looking into a new machine. I actually have 3 Jukis. They're all basically the same machine with minor, I guess, differences in each one. So I have the first one I got was the Juki TL2010Q. I also have a Juki QVP 2200 Mini. Those first 2 are about the same. I have a video on those 2 on my YouTube channel, and then the third Juki I have is one that recently came out, which is the Juki TL18 QVP, and that's the one with the micro lifter. I have a separate video on the Juki TL18 QVP, and you can also find that on my YouTube channel. And I demonstrate all the different features of the machine, the thread cutter. The new QVP has a LED light that you can dim, which is a really nice feature, so check that out. Alex says, I was wondering if there is a better way to make sure that straps are securely attached to bags. For example, I noticed that when I use rivets with vinyl, the vinyl tends to tear with heavy use. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Alex. I guess I haven't had that experience, so I'm trying to think of thoughts. If you have had that happen to you in the past with rivets, especially riveting through vinyl, if you have a suggestion for Alex, let us know in the comments. Danny will try to check out for that. I'm not sure if you were...
Like seam sealant around the rivets. Or some kind of glue to prevent the crack from the start.
I don't know. I really don't know. Perhaps a combination, if you weren't already doing it, a combination of the rivets with some top stitching, just sort of to extra reinforce that particular area. Diana says, do you recommend clipping into the zipper tape when rounding a curve? So this is a really great question, and I saw some discussion of it in the Facebook group, maybe in the last day or two. So I've done it both ways, and I guess I don't 100% know how I feel about it. So sometime in the past, especially when sewing a zipper through the curve, I've clipped into the fabric and the zipper tape about halfway up the seam allowance. So if the seam allowance was 1/4 of an inch, I would make little 1/8 of an inch high clips. Through the years, I've heard chatter about it. Some people like it, some people don't. And so lately I have not been clipping. Either way, I have not seen any adverse effects, me personally, with a zipper tape unraveling or the seam coming undone and raw edges of the cut zipper being exposed. I haven't had that personally happen to me, but I've seen it discussed online. So I guess it could go either way. If you're nervous about it, just don't clip through the zipper tape. You can clip through the fabric through the curve, and you can just leave the zipper tape intact. Sarah says, did you watch the Harry Potter Tournament of Houses game show? You know, I watched half of an episode. I saw that there were 4 episodes. I guess I'll have to go back and watch. I felt like the questions were a little bit over my head, especially haven't read the books in a few years, but definitely seemed like an exciting show, and I'm sure Violet would probably love it as well. Diane says, when would you choose to use a metal teeth zipper on a bag? The construction changes drastically when you do. So if you are using a zipper with metal teeth, you can remove some of the extra teeth that won't be showing. I did a video on different types of zippers, and I believe in that particular video I discussed how to remove extra metal teeth. So if you go to the Sew Sweetness YouTube channel and type in types of zippers, that particular video should come up. Hand cranking is also an option. Years ago, I once in a while would use a zipper with metal teeth, but these days I just pretty much use the nylon handbag zippers, or now there's zippers available, and we have some on our website as well. Nylon zippers with metal looking teeth, so they're not exactly metal teeth, but they have the appearance of metal teeth, so a little bit easier to sew over. Linda says, I consider myself an intermediate sewer, but have never made a bag. What do you recommend for a first endeavor, and what kind of batting interfacing should I use? So I highly recommend the Baker Street bag. It's a free pattern and video. You can find it either on my YouTube channel or on my website. It uses a zipper, so it gives you a chance to work with a zipper. It's got top stitch straps, which you can either attach to the outside of the bag or have it embedded in the seam, and I feel like it's a good size bag, and over the years I've seen people put their own spin on that pattern, so I think it's a really fun project to start with. What's the name of the bag behind your right shoulder? Chickadee backpack. This is the Chickadee backpack. I'll show you the back. It's got padded, there's actually foam in the straps, so they're nice and padded, and there's a metal frame on the top of the bag as well. Debbie says, do you always cut a 1/2 inch wide space to put a zipper regardless of number 3 zipper or number 5 zipper? That's a great question, Debbie. So my zipper pocket openings, I always design them to have a 1/2 inch wide opening, and that opening will fit either a number 3 zipper or a number 5. Either way, it'll work for both zippers. Norma says, have you used the Juki TL 2000 QI? If so, what do you think of it? I have not personally used that particular Juki. If memory serves me correctly, the only difference from that one and the one that I have, or the 3 that I have, is the 2000 doesn't have the speed control, I believe. So on my Juki, it has a little dial on the front with a picture of a rabbit and a picture of a turtle, which you can adjust to make the stitching speed faster or slower. I believe the 2000 just doesn't have that feature on it. Alex says, I wanted to say a huge thank you to my amazing husband who is currently watching, and he asked me if I would like him to broadcast Sewcial Sunday on our family room TV, and we are watching as a family. My son and husband are so supportive and are enjoying your show. That's awesome. I wish my kids would watch sewing shows with me. I mean, Danny does, but he sort of has to because he's doing the controls. Joan says, what do you consider the biggest advantage of sewing standing up? I have always been seated to sew. I think that's a really great question.
Better posture.
Yeah, probably better posture, especially if you're spending a lot of time on the computer. You might have a certain posture of sort of hunching or leaning forward, and if you're sitting to sew, that might be also incorporated into your posture when you're sewing. But if you're, I guess, mixing it up a bit, I do a lot of computer work, but then when I'm sewing, I'm standing, so I'm not always in the same posture. I guess that's my initial thought on that. Carla says, do you have a height adjustable table? Do you think it would be worth it? I definitely think it would be worth it, just because different people are different heights, and I'm currently working on an IKEA countertop, which is kitchen counter height. I'd like it to be a little taller. We do have a height adjustable table that we've just not put together yet, so I'll let you know my thoughts whenever we get around to putting that together. Rob says, can zipper by the yard be made into separating zippers? I wanted to experiment on one of the pouches, but I couldn't figure it out. That's a good question. I think I have seen metal zipper stops that you can add, but maybe I'm imagining things. If you've seen anything like that, let us know in the comments. Danny will keep an eye out for it. Wendy says, what is the best way to add a pocket when it's not in the pattern? That's a great question. I guess it depends on what type of pocket you want to add. Fortunately, I have several different free videos on my YouTube channel. You can just go to the Sew Sweetness YouTube channel and type it in the search box, which is usually on the right hand side. If you're looking for a zipper pocket, if you type in zipper pocket, I have a demonstration how to add a zipper pocket to any bag. So I demonstrate 2 different sizes of zipper pocket. If you want to add a side pocket to a bag, I think I have 2 different videos for that. An elastic pocket and a mesh elastic pocket. And I also have a zipper overlay pocket, which is like a zipper pocket, but it has like a nice little overlay, which you can cut out of cork or leather. That one you could just type in zipper overlay. So a few different options as far as adding pockets. Rosemary says, what is the name of the bag with the teal bottom to your left? My left, this one. Oh, almost fell off the chair. This is the Falabella pouch from Minikin Season 3, and it's sort of a adjustable, this top part pulls down to reveal whatever you have inside, pens, pencils, or whatnot. It comes in 3 different sizes, so this is the largest of the 3 sizes. Are you calling in on the questions, Danny?
I played a sad one.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
All right. I apologize if I did not get to your questions live, but I'll be back again next Sunday, and Danny will be joining me on next Sunday's show. One last thing is the giveaway. Danny, if you wouldn't mind switching to the overhead camera just so I can show you what's in tonight's giveaway. So a few weeks ago I ordered some fabric from Fat Quarter Shop, and they included I guess I spent a lot of money, so they included a bag with some notions. So I wanted to give away the notions on today's show. So I guess I'll just lay them out. This one's really cool. This is a magnetic needle minder, some woven labels, cutting mat cleaning sponge, which I talked about recently on Sewcial Sunday, some greeting cards, purple tape, and some glue basting. So all of that will be included in tonight's prize. Danny can switch back to the front camera. We randomly draw winners out of all of the comments left on the show. We combine them all, Facebook and YouTube, and you have until the end of the day this Saturday to leave a comment on the show. I'll draw the winner at the end of the day Saturday and announce the winner on next Sunday's show. So I'll give you an extra opportunity to leave a comment by answering this question. Go ahead and answer it in the comments now. What Sew Sweetness pattern do you want to sew this year? Perhaps you've had an eye on a particular project that you haven't made yet, or maybe you've made a particular Sew Sweetness project a few times, but you'd like to make it again in a special fabric. Let me know in the comments which Sew Sweetness pattern you want to sew up this year. So thank you so much for joining me for Sewcial Sunday. I hope you have a great week and happy sewing. Bye, everybody.